His body rotted for 3 days in his own house. His sons refused to come near him. His skin literally separated from his bones. And when they finally disposed of him, they didn't even touch his corpse. They knocked down a wall on top of him like garbage. But here's the terrifying part. Allah revealed an entire surah years before his death, guaranteeing his destruction. Every single word came true. Tabbat yada Abi Lahab wa tabba.
Named in the Qur'an while still alive. This is the fate of Abu Lahab.
His wife, choked to death by the same rope she used to carry thorns. His son, ripped apart by a lion after insulting the Prophet ﷺ just once. This is the story of Abu Lahab, the man who had everything but lost it all because of hatred. And today, you'll discover exactly how it all ended. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Now, let's dive in. Before he became the most hated man in Islamic history, Abu Lahab was actually beloved. Picture this. The year is approximately 570 CE in the heart of Makkah. Abdul Muttalib, the undisputed master of Quraysh, receives the news a son has been born to him. Not just any son, but a boy who would grow to become one of the most striking men the city had ever seen. He named him Abdul Uzza, servant of one of their sacred idols, never knowing how tragically ironic that name would become. But everyone else? They called him Abu Lahab, father of flame. Now you might think this nickname came from some fiery temper or violent nature, but the truth is far more interesting. They gave him this name because of his extraordinary beauty. His face literally glowed with radiance. His complexion was so fair, so luminous, that when he walked through the markets of Makkah, people would turn their heads just to catch a glimpse. The name Lahab, flame, was about the brilliance of his appearance, not darkness in his soul, at least not yet. Years passed, and Abu Lahab didn't just rest on his good looks. The man built an empire. He became one of the wealthiest merchants in Quraysh, accumulating riches that made even other nobles envious. Influence? He had it in abundance. When the leaders of Makkah gathered to make decisions, Abu Lahab's voice carried weight. People respected him, feared him even, and sought his counsel in matters of war and peace. Then came the day that would forever connect his life to prophecy itself. His brother, Abdullah's wife, Amina, gave birth to a boy. Little Muhammad had entered the world. According to some classical scholars and traditional sources, Abu Lahab's reaction was pure joy so overwhelming that he immediately freed his slave girl Thuwayba, who brought him the news. Though the exact details of this account vary among historians, and Allah knows best what truly occurred in his heart that day, what we do know is this. There was a time when Abu Lahab didn't hate his nephew. There was a time when family bonds seemed unbreakable. His life intertwined even deeper with Muhammad ﷺ through marriage. Abu Lahab married Arwa bint Harb, better known as Jamil, the sister of none other than Abu Sufyan, placing him among the highest nobility of Quraysh. But here's where it gets really connected. His sons were at one point engaged, contracted in marriage to the Prophet ﷺ, daughters Ruqayya and Kulthum radhiyallahu anhuma. But those ties were later broken under Quraysh pressure. Ruqayya and Kulthum radhiyallahu anhuma. Think about that for a moment. Abu Lahab wasn't just an uncle by blood. He became a father-in-law through marriage. His grandchildren would have been the Prophet's ﷺ grandchildren. Their houses stood next to each other. They did business together. They shared meals, celebrations, and the everyday rhythms of Makkan life. Everything seemed perfect. Abu Lahab had wealth that others envied, status that commanded respect, and family ties to the future Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that should have guaranteed him eternal honor. But one announcement would destroy it all. It was a normal day in Makkah, until a voice echoed from Mount Safa that would split families forever. The sun hung high over the sacred city when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam received a command from Allah that would change everything. And warn your closest relatives. Simple words, devastating implications. Because warning your family means some of them might reject you, and rejection from family cuts deeper than any sword. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew what he had to do. He climbed Mount Safa, where his voice could carry across Makkah, and he called out with the well-known alarm cry of the Arabs, Ya Sabaha. The city instantly understood this was a public warning. The effect was instant and electric. Merchants dropped their goods. Women rushed from their homes. Children stopped playing. Men who couldn't leave their stations sent servants running to see what catastrophe had befallen them. Because you have to understand something about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This man, for 40 years, had never lied, not once, not even in jest. When As-Sadiq, the truthful one, called out a warning, people listened. The crowd gathered at the base of Mount Safa, faces turned upward, hearts pounding. Among them stood the leaders of Quraysh. Abu Jahl was there, Abu Sufyan, and of course Abu Lahab, probably wondering why his beloved nephew had summoned the entire city. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked down at the sea of faces and asked them a question. O people of Quraysh, if I told you that an army of horsemen was gathering behind this mountain, preparing to attack you at dawn, would you believe me? The response was unanimous and immediate. Yes, we would believe you. We have never known you to tell a lie. Even his enemies had to admit it. The man's integrity was beyond question. For 4 decades, not a single soul could point to a dishonest word from his lips. That's the kind of reputation Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had built. Then came the words that shattered everything. Then, I am a warner to you before a severe punishment. I have been sent as a prophet to you specifically, and to all mankind generally. There is no God worthy of worship except Allah alone. Leave behind these idols that neither benefit nor harm you. The day of resurrection is coming, and you will be raised just as you wake from sleep. Paradise is real and eternal. Hellfire is real and eternal. The silence must have been deafening. People looked at each other in confusion, disbelief, perhaps even fear. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued, Who among you will support me in this matter? Most stayed quiet, processing what they'd just heard. Abu Talib, his uncle and protector, spoke carefully. Proceed with what Allah has commanded you. I will continue to protect and defend you, though my soul cannot bring itself to leave the religion of Abdul Muttalib. But Abu Lahab, his face had turned red, not with the radiant glow that gave him his nickname, but with pure volcanic rage. He stood up, his voice cutting through the crowd like a whip. Tabat Laka, may you be destroyed. Is this why you gathered us? Ruin and destruction upon you for the rest of this day? The words hung in the air like poison. The Prophet's sallallahu alaihi wasallam own uncle, in front of all Makkah, had just cursed him publicly for calling them to the truth. Family bonds, 40 years of trust, the respect of kinship. Abu Lahab threw it all away in one moment of pride-fueled fury. And what happened next would be recited until the day of judgment itself. The angel Jibreel alayhi salam descended with a revelation, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam received words directly from Allah that mentioned Abu Lahab by name. May the hands of Abu Lahab be ruined, and ruined is he. His wealth will not avail him, nor what he earned. He will enter a blazing fire. Think about the weight of that moment. Allah, the creator of the universe, had just guaranteed Abu Lahab's destruction while he was still alive and listening. The Qur'an had sealed his fate 10 years before his death. All he had to do to prove it false was say one sentence, La ilaha illa Allah. One sentence to save himself from eternal fire. But he never did. From that moment, Abu Lahab had a choice. Prove the Quran wrong by accepting Islam, or prove it right by remaining a kafir until his last breath. He chose his fate. And the war between uncle and nephew had officially begun. What followed was a ruthless campaign, social pressure, propaganda, and abuse meant to silence the truth. What happened next wasn't just family drama. It was a calculated, systematic campaign to destroy Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam credibility using the one weapon more powerful than swords or wealth: family authority. Because who knows a man better than his uncle? Who would people trust more, a nephew making extraordinary claims, or the respected elder of the family calling him a liar? Abu Lahab developed a strategy so effective it would be studied by propagandists for centuries. Every single time Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to the marketplace to call people to Islam, Abu Lahab was there. Not beside him, behind him, like a shadow, like a curse. Picture the scene. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam approaches a group of merchants or travelers, his voice calm and sincere. I invite you to testify that there is no God but Allah and that I am his messenger. Leave behind these stones that cannot hear or see or benefit you in any way. Worship the one who created you. People would lean in, curious, considering his words. And then, right on cue, Abu Lahab's voice would boom from behind. Don't listen to him. He's a liar. He's a magician who wants to turn you away from the religion of your forefathers. Someone in the crowd would inevitably ask, Who are you? And Abu Lahab's answer was a dagger. I'm his uncle. I know him better than any of you. He's trying to deceive you. That last part, I'm his uncle, was pure psychological warfare. In Arab culture, family vouches for family. An uncle's testimony carried immense weight. When people heard that even his own uncle rejected him, they thought, if his own flesh and blood says he's lying, why should we believe him? It was brilliant in its cruelty and devastatingly effective. How many people walked away from truth because of those words? How many souls might have been saved if Abu Lahab had simply stayed silent? But Abu Lahab didn't just use words. He deployed his considerable wealth like weapons. He paid people to mock the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the streets. He funded poets to compose verses ridiculing Islam. When Quraysh organized the brutal 3-year boycott of Bani Hashim, starving them, isolating them, trying to break their will, Abu Lahab eagerly joined the oppressors against his own family. Children were crying from hunger in that valley, and Abu Lahab's response was to tighten the noose. And then there was his wife, Jamil. If Abu Lahab was the voice of opposition, she was its hands and feet. According to some narrations and classical scholars, every single night she would gather thorns, the sharpest, most vicious thorns she could find, and scatter them along the path. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked to pray at the Kaaba. In the darkness, his blessed feet would step on them, blood seeping into the sand. Some weak narrations also mention that she would place thorns on his clothes when they hung out to dry after washing, trying to tear them, ruin them, leave him with nothing. Allah knows best. But her real weapon was her tongue, sharp, cutting, relentless. She would walk through the streets of Makkah spreading lies about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, slander, mockery, fabricated stories designed to turn people's hearts away from Islam. She had a gift for cruelty, and she used it with precision. The psychological torture was constant because they lived next door. Imagine that your worst enemy's living in the house right beside yours, plotting your destruction every single day. The Prophet ﷺ endured it all with patience that seems almost superhuman, but there were moments when even he asked Allah for relief. One day, the harassment became too much, and he raised his hands. The Prophet ﷺ remained patient and sought Allah's justice, and Allah is the most just. Even in his anger, notice what he asked for, not immediate death or worldly punishment, but justice in the hereafter. Because the Prophet ﷺ knew something Abu Lahab didn't. Temporary victory means nothing if you lose eternity. But Abu Lahab wasn't satisfied with just attacking the Prophet ﷺ personally. His next move would prove just how far hatred can push a man. He was about to tear his own family apart with his bare hands. Abu Lahab looked at his sons and said words that would echo in Islamic history. "Your heads are forbidden to me until you divorce Muhammad's daughters." Let that sink in for a moment. A father disowning his own sons unless they destroy their marriages, not because the wives were bad people, not because the marriages were unhappy, but purely out of spite. This is what hatred does. It turns fathers against sons, breaks apart families, and makes cruelty feel justified. The scene must have been tense. Abu Lahab and Jamil standing before their sons Utbah and Utaiba, fury radiating from them both. Jamil's voice was probably just as harsh as her husband's. "We are threatened with hellfire in Muhammad's Qur'an. Your father and I will be disgraced. You will divorce his daughters immediately, or you will never see our faces again." In Arab culture, this threat cutting off a son completely was social death. No inheritance, no family support, no place in society. Everything they had came from their father's wealth and status. The ultimatum was clear and cruel. "You will not speak to us. You will not enter our home. You will not receive a single dirham from us until you separate from Ruqayya and Kulthum." But it wasn't just Abu Lahab making demands. The other leaders of Quraysh saw an opportunity to hurt Muhammad ﷺ where it would devastate him most, through his daughters. They approached the sons with offers. "Divorce them, and we will marry you to any woman in Quraysh you desire. The most beautiful, the wealthiest, the noblest. Take your pick." Interestingly, they also went to Abu al-As, who was married to Muhammad ﷺ's eldest daughter Zainab. They made him the same offer. But Abu al-As refused outright. "No, by Allah, I will not separate from my wife. There is no woman I would prefer over her." His loyalty was so steadfast that later, after he accepted Islam, the Prophet ﷺ praised him, saying, "He spoke to me and was truthful, and he promised me and fulfilled his promise." That's the kind of man who earns respect across generations. But Utaiba, he took the deal. He divorced Kulthum radiyallahu anha before the marriage was even consummated, which was a small mercy from Allah, and married the daughter of Sa'id ibn al-As instead, sealing his alliance with Quraysh's elite. Utbah also divorced Ruqayya radiyallahu anha, though some narrations mention he showed less enthusiasm for it than his brother. Later, after these painful separations, Allah blessed both women with a marriage to one of the greatest men in Islamic history. Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu first married Ruqayya, and after her death, married Kulthum. That's why he's called